This program aims to find solutions to your medical queries. It seeks answers to common health problems that have been hounding you. We will help you out in finding answers to your medical concerns. Good evening, everyone. I'm Angel Jacob, and this is MedTalk, your weekly on-air health consultation here on the Solar News Channel.
It's touted as one of the deadliest killer diseases in the country today. Based on the recent data collected from the World Health Organization, roughly 17 million people succumb to cardiovascular diseases every year, making it one of the leading causes of death in the Philippines.
The most common heart ailment is coronary artery disease, which is basically an obstruction of the artery of the heart. We call it coronary arteries, and this is secondary to smoking, unhealthy diet, and lack of exercise.
In fact, according to the National Statistics Office, 5 out of 10 deaths in the country can be traced to cardiovascular causes.
So it's a silent epidemic right now. It is lumped under the category of the non-communicable diseases.
The good news, however, is that you have the ability to take charge of your life. For instance, good eating habits and lifestyle changes can add more years to your life.
Kung pattern kasi sa foreign, like sa US, di ba ang usually vegetables nila, broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, cucumber. Sa atin, for Filipino, pang masa, pwede yun yung mga, kunyari, sinigang, maraming kangkong, eggplant. In general, ganito yung plate niya. Half nung plate almost vegetable, and then 1/4 yung fruit. And then yung protein niya, and then supposedly nandito yung kanin. Ito yon, carbs. Tapos yung beverage.
It is very important. Ang lifestyle kasi yung pang-araw-araw mong ginagawa eh. Ngayon, doon sa pang-araw-araw mong ginagawa, medyo nabibilibid ka doon eh ng konti. Why? Because of your duties, let's say, as a physician or even physician, estudyante, in the workplace or community, hindi mo alam yung ginagawa mo nakakasama na pala sa health mo.
And since heart disease is a well-documented ailment, there are numerous support groups, research and information out there on why it happens and on how you can help yourself to prevent it. What can you do to reduce the risks of having a heart disease? What are some of the symptoms of a heart attack? Find out the answers tonight on MedTalk.
And joining us this evening is Dr. Jonas Del Rosario, the chairman of the Advocacy Committee of the Philippine Heart Association and a pediatric cardiologist from the St. Luke's Medical Center. Also with us is Dr. Helen Ong-Garcia, the co-chairman of the Advocacy Committee of the Philippine Heart Association and an adult cardiologist from the St. Luke's Medical Center. You may join our discussion by calling our hotline at 548-4678. Good evening, doctors. Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
It's Heart Health Month. It's
Yes,
Heart Month.
It's a heart month.
So it's time to get our hearts healthy. By getting our hearts healthy, let's first talk about what is the feeling of someone who has a healthy heart. What is it like to have a healthy heart?
I'll go first, Jonas.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Normally, we don't feel our heart. I would dread if anyone say, I can feel my heart pumping. Normally, we don't. So the moment we become conscious of our heart speaking to us through symptoms, that usually is a first sign that probably something is wrong. There are some symptoms that you actually have to be worried about. We were talking a while ago, like if, for example, on my daily activities, I walk from my house to my office and I don't feel anything. Then suddenly, for a past couple of days, I find that it's getting to be a little bit harder. I'm getting short of breath when I reach the office. Think, why is that so? Number two, as I mentioned, the heart doesn't talk to us. It pumps now as I'm talking. But if I can feel it pumping while I'm talking, maybe that's what we call palpitation. And that could be a sign that your heart has something going on. And of course, the most common but dreaded and most renowned symptom is paninikip, chest pain. So when you have chest pains, when you used not to have it, maybe you would wonder why. And those are some of the symptoms that you could have a heart. So a healthy heart is a heart that doesn't speak nor make itself felt.
Okay, so it's a silent heart, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, it,
Yes,
allow,
Dr.
it, allows
Del
you to,
Rosario.
it allows you to do a lot of things you wanted to do, primarily exercise, no? Because exercise intolerance is one of the main reasons why people will worry, oh, why am I short of breath? Why am I not being able to do this when I was much younger? So, and even in younger kids, parents bring patients to me, their children complaining of, they complain of shortness of breath, chest heaviness, pounding chest, so all of those things. So usually if your heart is really healthy, you can really push yourself in a way.
In pushing ourselves, how do we maintain the health and how do we maintain a strong heart? How do we do that?
Well, the primer, a while ago, Dr. Liachon mentioned it. There's nothing wrong with the formula of a healthy lifestyle. In order to maintain a healthy body, proper nutrition, proper exercise, maintaining your weight, avoid the vices. But of course, those are the most difficult things to do. Right, Jonas?
Yeah. Now, the heart is a muscle. Just like anything, it's a muscle, it's something that you also can train. So someone who is, let's say, eating right, but probably does not exercise, in a way, will not be the same as someone who is eating right and also try to push that heart to work a little bit. So it's a muscle, and so we have people who are, if you compare someone who is probably a triathlete, he definitely is more, he can really last running for kilometers or miles because his heart over time has really gotten bigger and more, really ready for that kind of stress. So there's also an element of trying to push this muscle to be able to withstand the stress.
So we've talked about pushing your heart, which is a muscle to withstand the stress. We've talked about a healthy heart, which is silent, doesn't really speak to us, but when we are not able to take care of our heart, it speaks to us already. Is that right, Dr. Garcia? And how does it speak to us? What are the signs and symptoms of the most common heart diseases?
As an adult cardiologist, probably I've already mentioned some of the signs and symptoms. One, chest pain. Chest discomfort is a proper word than pain. Sometimes there's a chest tightness that you feel, and it's unusual. Most of the patients I've asked will say it's really an unusual feeling, like air is caught inside your chest and it just persists and it waxes and wanes. And then later on you will find that it becomes more prominent every day. Initially it's once a week, then becomes twice a week, then later it's daily. And it is also affected by activity. The more activity you do, the more it comes out. And it's not alone. Sad to say, misery loves company. In this case, chest pain is also accompanied by that shortness of breath. And sometimes this is also accompanied by palpitation. And as mentioned by Jonas, exercise intolerance. Now, I cannot do the things I used to do. So the normal tendency of some people is that denial is very strong. I tend to cut down on the activities I do. If I feel chest pain when I walk, let's say a kilometer, I'll start stopping before that kilometer comes. Take my breath, then walk. Not knowing that is already a sign that something is going on. So that's maybe the reason why more often than not for adults, they go to the doctor when it's a little bit into the moderate intensity of pain already, rather than the early phase.
Rather than go as soon as they feel that there's something wrong. Is it the same case for children? Like their parents bring them?
Yeah, well, the children, they usually sometimes will also complain of chest pain, but luckily, mostly the chest pain in kids, it's not really due to heart disease. It's usually musculoskeletal pain. But of course, we also pay attention to this. Okay? In children, it's more of feeding difficulties, fast breathing. Parents will bring their kids, they're worried because their kids are not growing well or their weights are really kind of like at a standstill. When you are the more complex heart diseases in children, and I think we're going to discuss it later, the ones with congenital heart defects totally have different signs and symptoms. But in terms of what they usually will volunteer, I mean, chest pain is still there, shortness of breath, especially the older ones, those who are in the adolescents who are almost adults. So they will be complaining pretty much the same way as the adults. We're also concerned about kids who pass out, especially when they are in the field, in the playing fields. Athletes who will suddenly collapse in the playing field. That's something that's a red flag that we actually have to investigate if they have a heart problem.
Having a heart problem when they pass out on the field, due to other factors, the heat, too much exertion?
That's right. So there are environmental or stress factors outside of what you have, but you take that into consideration, but at the same time you also have to make sure this athlete is actually safe, has a normal heart to be able to play.
And we speak of a normal heart, we speak of paninikip ng dibdib earlier. How do we distinguish a paninikip ng dibdib, chest pain, from heartburn?
That's pretty difficult, honestly, because the esophagus is right behind the heart. So the description I just gave a while ago, there's a reason it's called heartburn, because it simulates paninikip. It simulates like a heart attack symptom. So it's very difficult to differentiate. We would probably advise the moment you do feel that, don't test yourself. Go to a doctor, go to an expert, ask which one you're actually having, and they could run tests to make sure that you are not actually suffering from a heart attack.
Okay. So you mentioned the heart attack, which leads us to talking about a heart attack and a stroke, the difference between the two. More on heart ailments when MedTalk returns. Thank you.
Did you know that the human heart beats 2.8 billion times by the time you're 70? In fact, according to PreventHeartAttack.com, the heart begins beating at 4 weeks after conception and does not stop until death.
We're back here on MedTalk, still talking about heart ailments. Now let's answer, doctors, help me answer our question from Facebook. From Misery Hails Grace, what is the connection between high blood pressure and heart attack?
Normally, high blood pressure is what we call one of the risk factors. You don't develop heart disease just like that. I mean, God did not just strike you with a lightning and say you have a heart disease. There are certain risk factors that have to be there, the formula. So which means the recipe like diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, sedentary lifestyle, smoking. Those are some of the common, what we call risk factors that if they're there, your chances of having a heart attack is there. Hypertension drives blood through the vasculature, through the arteries, and then when they drive to that, just like water pipes, when you have water going through that, the walls are damaged by the pressure that pushes it. So the same way with hypertension, it damages the blood vessels, and when it damages the blood vessels, that's where clots form, cholesterol deposits, and they cause blockages, which ends up with heart attack or coronary artery disease.
Okay, all right. And that was a lot to digest also for me, but at the end of the day, it's really just making sure that the blood pumps well inside your heart.
That's right.
In actuality, it's making sure those risk factors that I mentioned should stay out of your life.
Okay. Or if you can't, maybe eliminate, right?
Or
To
lessen.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's really difficult for a lifestyle change, cold turkey lifestyle change.
I think it's not that difficult if you start early. It's just like education. If you actually start when you're young, you already value exercise, you value a good diet, then I guess you will never end up meeting an adult cardiologist like
That's why now
But we learned so much from you, Doc. We'd like to meet you.
No, that's why as pediatric cardiologists, we try to stress now that really the heart attack did not happen, or the precursors or the risk factors did not happen when you were 40 or 50 or 60. You can trace it there when they were in their teens, okay? There were studies already before, many studies showing that those fatty deposits in those blood vessels, that eventually that buildup in cholesterol will cause heart attack. In some of these kids who were autopsied, they look at the linings of their blood vessels, they're already like fat deposits. And so clearly this heart disease, the ones that cause coronary artery disease, has its origins during childhood. So now really the trend now, the paradigm shift of trying to attack prevention at the younger age, no? And so very important in the Philippines, is probably we can make a dent if we actually instill in our kids while they are young, exercise, the diet, in the Philippines, our diet is really like, we call it atherogenic, very
Fatty.
We like fat. There are studies now that it's not only fat, but sugar, high sugar.
And salt.
And salt. So
And
sugar, fat, salt. And then, of course, you can see the sedentary lifestyle. As you see, our kids now are into video games.
They just sit down the
screen
whole
time.
day.
I mean, you can just see like a profile, a perfect profile of a kid. Kind of overweight, sitting and like stuck in like a gadget or a video.
Our kids who have a sedentary lifestyle eat a lot of sugar, eat a lot of fat, and oily food.
They
Are
like
they
that.
prone also to heart attacks at a very young age?
Not necessarily, but you know that, well, there are studies now that if you're overweight or obese when you're young, 3 times higher to be obese or overweight when you're older. If you have been exposed to smoking, like your parents are smoking, the people around you are smoking, most likely you will be smoking when you are older.
On top of that, the effect of secondary smoking is already there during childhood. So I guess you're just as bad or even worse than the smoker itself. Jonas mentioned obesity. That's fast becoming one of the prime mover for people to develop coronary artery disease or heart attacks. Add on that, if you have parents who have those, heart disease, family history, hypertension, or even worse, diabetes. On top of that, you develop the love for smoking, you drink the quotation mark, good life, then you probably will end up having a cardiologist as part of your panel of visits every month.
The speed dial.
Yes, speed dial for your cardiologist. Doc, what can I do po?
But we'd like our cardiologist to just, the speed dial to check our heart,
That's right, that's
just
right.
for regular checkups, not for an emergency. But speaking of emergencies, a heart attack or a stroke is an emergency, and we have to distinguish between the two, which one is being experienced by the patient. So let's define a heart attack and a stroke, the similarity and the difference.
In actuality, those are two terms that are often mistaken for each other in the Filipino nomenclature. Okay. When you talk to a patient, it's quite difficult in interviewing. They will tell you, Doc, yung kaya kapitbahay ko may stroke. And then you start talking about heart disease and you only find out, oh, stroke pala sa brain. The word stroke is usually associated with brain ischemia, or what we call lack of blood or oxygen to the brain. The mechanism is the same. Blockages in arteries causing the lack of blood to the organ that is involved. But normally, when you concern the heart, it's called a heart attack. But sa Tagalog kasi, na-stroke sa ulo, na-stroke sa puso.
It's the same.
It's not really the same.
Okay.
When you say a stroke, the doctor will presume it's the brain.
The brain.
But when you say heart attack, that's in scientific term, which is difficult to pronounce, heart attack na lang. Ang tawag sa scientific term kasi, myocardial ischemia. Pero mahirap pronounce, kaya mas madaling sabihin, ay, na-stroke yung kapitbahay. And because mahihain tayong Pinoy, we don't ask which stroke, so we just presume it must be the heart.
Okay, but more often than not, it's a heart
the-
attack.
Right.
Doctors, we have a caller on the line. Good evening, Mr. Santos.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, your question, please.
Yes, recently I had a 2D echo. So the result of the ejection fraction was 61. Everything is normal. So my question is, can I improve that ejection fraction?
An ejection fraction is one measurement of how well the heart muscle is squeezing. normally it's about 54 to 80%, more or less in that range. So 61% is normal, okay, in its absolute terms. So, but you also have to, if this is being followed serially, then you can compare it as how it is. But if it's his first time and you give us that value, that's a relatively normal heart function.
Nothing to worry about.
I was just wondering why he had a 2D echo.
Okay, Mr. Santos, are you still on the line?
Yes. I became hypertensive at 33. I am now 40 years old. So from time to time, I think this is my second 2D echo. I cannot remember the results of the previous one. Yes, but also, I'd like to know if I can go back to my previous physical activity. I used to be active, although now I'm concerned of the hypertension, so medyo less na yung activity.
To the echo, mentioned a normal heart by virtue of the ejection fraction. When you said that the doctor said it's normal, I presume there are no problems with the muscles of the heart. The echo is actually the ultrasound of the heart. So the doctor can actually see the movement of your muscles, and from a numerical calculation, they could get the ejection fraction, pumping ability of your heart in percentages. Now, if your 2D echo is normal, that's a good sign na your heart is normal at rest. But you're asking about going back to your physical activity, which means exercise. The 2D echo is not enough to tell us the information, especially if you've been sedentary for quite some time. If you have been quite active, no need for additional exercise. I would probably advise you to go back to your doctor and maybe you would order some other tests just to make sure that during exercise, how does your heart fare? And that will give you an assurance of going back to your activity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Santos, any other question for our doctors?
None at the moment.
No. Okay, if you think of something, you can
Okay,
call us
thank you,
back. Okay,
Oh.
salamat.
At least he's
Thank you,
thinking of
thank you.
Yes,
going into an active lifestyle again.
going back to that. 2D echo, is it a requirement for those who have hit the big 4-0?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Not
What do
exactly.
you usually do to screen those?
Sometimes our patients actually have become so conscious of their health. So we do to the echo for those we want to screen if they have any anatomic or muscle problem. So sometimes if the history will give us a certain suspicion, a 2D echo is ordered. But is it routine? No.
No. Okay. Thank you, doctors. Now we have another question from Facebook. What should you do if you find yourself with someone appearing to have a heart attack? Okay.
I presume that if, for example, if you are just standing there in the elevator, somebody's just said beside you, naninikip ang dibdib ko. Then without a history, then probably the best thing I would say is to probably call for help. Call for medical help, and if that's possible, then probably that would help a lot. But what if you're the only one there and you have no medical background? I would probably say bring that person to the nearest hospital, medical facility you can have, even if it's a clinic, because then the medical help will be there. Now, the other question is, what if somebody collapses
That's right.
right in front of you after complaining of a chest pain? This is where you're gonna probably request to the Lord that sana kinuha ko yung basic life support na ina-offer ng Red Cross.
Okay.
You should know
Which
how
is
to
very
resist.
important, no? One family member must learn.
Actually, that's one of our
Everybody,
advocacy
everybody.
in the Philippine Heart Association, that we would like to save lives, so we would like to actually say if only each family would have somebody who knows how to do basic life support, then lives could be saved.
Right.
Because within 5 minutes of the heart stopping, damage occurs across the body. First and foremost, the brain. So time is gold in this case, and that's very true.
And it's also very important to be aware of or mindful of those around you. Kung naninikip na talaga
Yeah,
yung
yeah.
dibdib,
Well,
not to ignore. Others kasi tend to stay away and they don't want to, kumbaga, makialam.
Help towards the nearest medical facility brings in a lot of benefit for that person na naninikip ang dibdib.
Helen, is there a way to differentiate classic heart attack from any other heart attack? I mean, any other chest pain, for that matter?
Normally, we don't want to underplay chest pain anymore because of the fact the delay in identifying a real heart attack comes in. When you try to to delineate if this is true or not.
Is there a certain look on the face of a person na
Maputla ba?
pinapawisa,
Pawis?
maputla? I mean, you know, some...
Normally, those are late signs eh. The first sign is actually talaga the very
So you-
subtle paninikip ng dibdib lang eh. But, as I mentioned, if somebody beside you is having a heart attack, that person must have done it already. He ignored it already. And probably by the time that he reached you, you're right, pinapapawisan ng malamig, namumutla, hindi makahinga, you hardly can talk to that person kasi he's short of breath even talking. That is actually, you're only minutes away from what about is to occur the most traumatic experience of your
Oh my.
life.
I hope we don't reach that point when
No.
someone is
I-
experiencing that.
That's right. I read, it was posted in the internet that if you're having a heart attack and you're driving, they were saying you should be coughing, cough and cough. And apparently the principle behind that is by coughing is you're pumping your chest. I mean, what's your take on that?
One of the most common cause of sudden cardiac death,
Yeah.
those that actually will cause those problems that we're mentioning,
Yes.
is irregularities in heartbeat, what we call ventricular tachycardia. And those are fatal irregulars in heartbeat.
So arrhythmia, huh? It's an
So,
arrhythmia.
it's not the blockages that cause the problem. Eh. It's the complications of the blockages that cause to your heart muscles. At the same time, arrhythmia or irregularities in heartbeat comes after that. So what does coughing do? Coughing resets the programming of your heart. So when you cough, you activate, sorry for using medical terms, Valsalva's maneuver. So meron tayong receptors dito sa neck and other parts of the chest. But when you do coughing, it resets those baroreceptors and the heart pumps more efficiently.
So is it like shocking? Excuse me,
Yeah.
is that shocking your heart or just resetting?
It
Keep
is,
on resetting.
it is
And
not
so you keep on
actually
coughing.
advocated as a medical therapy,
Okay.
but it's something you can do.
Okay,
But
it will help.
It will help.
It might save you.
Well,
Maybe.
we will not say it 100%, but I'll probably say that could help. One. Number two, if you're driving a car and you're having chest pain, please stop the car and call for help.
Tsaka when you're alone and you're alone in the car driving, experiencing chest pain, there's so many things that are going through in your mind.
That's
and
right,
you're not able to focus on the chest pain alone.
Because you might panic.
Yeah.
And one of the complications sometimes is you actually lose consciousness. You might end up harming others. So stop the car.
Okay.
Everyone has a cell phone now. Call for help.
Speed
Tell
dial.
them where you are. And then probably the best is to call your wife and probably call the nearest hospital if you have the
Right.
number. Speed dial the police if you can.
Yeah.
Just somebody to bring you to the nearest
I-
hospital.
Yeah.
I just hope the traffic will allow people to get you for help, right?
That's for another avenue to talk about.
But sometimes, you never know. By God's grace, there's help.
Bystander, yeah.
There's a
Who's
bystander.
doctor.
There's an ambulance.
That's
Maybe
right.
there's someone who can help you in a
Calling
situation
for help
like
might end up calling somebody who actually knows basic life support.
That's right,
Right.
that's right.
And they will help you. And sometimes, like in the plane, they actually announce,
Yes.
is there a doctor in the group?
Yeah, that's
I'm sure in that heavy traffic along EDSA, there must be one doctor in the group.
One doctor on the plane
One
who can
doctor.
help you, or even if it's not a doctor, basta marunong.
That's
ng-
right. So
ng
I think it's
CPR.
very
okay.
important.
No? Okay.
Very important
In-
to learn basic life support.
In children, doctor, how does that go? Do they experience
Well,
the same
we have
thing?
reported cases. Thank God, heart attacks is not very common in kids. You know, there are some congenital heart defects that can cause heart attacks, but they don't usually will complain of like my chest is hurting, especially if it happens in babies or infants. The classic presentation of a baby having chest pain caused by a heart attack is their incessant crying, unconsolable, and just like what we were talking about, they look very pale, sweating. And they eventually will faint pulses and all those things. But it's not so common. But once they become like adolescents, young adults, they basically have the same complaints.
So we mentioned the complaints, we mentioned children who become young adults. When we come back, we'll talk about understanding coronary heart disease, which is genetic, I understand. Is
Well,
that
there's
true?
a lot of genetic predisposition. That's why family history is very important.
Okay, so we'll talk about that, the family history, coronary heart disease, and more when MedTalk returns.
Just about 9 people in 1,000 are born with a congenital heart defect, according to heart.org of the American Heart Association. One of them is Athena, who at such an early age was diagnosed with cyanotic heart disease.
Bali, nung 5 months na po siya nung na-detect yung sakit niya, nakinig sa heart niya na meron siyang murmur. Nagkaroon ng mga series of tests. So, after ng 2D echo, nakita nga na meron siyang defect dun sa heart niya.
The cause is still unknown, and it is regarded a very rare condition where her oxygenated blood is mixed with unoxygenated blood.
Nalaman namin na instead na 4 chambers yung heart niya na sa normal na tao, yung sa kanya 2 chambers lang.
This in turn makes her complexion blue and her lips purple. But thanks to remarkable advances in diagnosing and treatment of heart diseases, millions of lives have evidently been saved. For instance, Athena recently underwent a delicate procedure called Glenn Shunt, a Fontan surgery to revitalize her systemic blood circulation.
Malaki po yung improvement talaga nung after na surgery niya. Kasi nung before siya operahan, sobrang itim talaga nung lips niya eh. Talagang may kita, isang tingin mo pa lang, alam mo na may depresya yung bata. Ay, hindi na rin siya masyadong nahingal kasi pag tumatakbo siya, sobrang pagod na pagod agad. Kahit isang mga 5 minutes lang, hingal na talaga siya.
Today, Athena's condition has improved. Her parents are positive that she will have a bright future ahead of her.
We're back here on MedTalk, still talking about heart diseases. Now let's talk about Athena, who has a congenital heart problem.
Right.
What can you say about that, Doc? She only has, we have 4 chambers of our heart, and she only has 2.
Yeah, that's a complicated heart defect, okay? Which means if it's a congenital heart defect, that was inborn. So something happened during heart development when the baby was still in the womb, usually during the first trimester. Mm-hmm. So in her case, because there were only 2 chambers, there's mixing of what we call blue blood and red blood. And red blood signifies oxygen-rich blood. That's the one that should be flowing in her lips, in her eyes, in her fingers. And because of this 2-chamber hearts, there's mixture. And that's why when you look at that child in that video clip, you can see some darkening of the lips. Mm-hmm. That's the most common sign, anyway, of someone with what we call cyanotic or a blue baby. Okay.
Isn't there a way to detect if the child does have a congenital heart problem inside the womb?
There's now. Before we don't have that, but because of advancement of technology, the ultrasound, we have an ultrasound of the heart we call 2D echo, right?
Yes.
There is a 2D echo now while the baby is inside. We call it fetal 2D echo. Mm-hmm. So an OBGYN who will be screening or looking at these babies will actually have a look at their hearts. And if they see something is different, let's say, they usually will try to look for 4 chambers actually. If they notice that it's only 2 or 3, then usually they will send them to a pediatric cardiologist who will do a more detailed examination. Mm-hmm. And we will be able to exactly diagnose what's wrong before the baby is born. So when the baby is born, there's no surprise, oh, why is this and that? Especially if that baby has a critical heart disease, which needs some type of intervention at birth or the first few days of life. If that baby is born in a lying-in hospital or in a rural hospital, then there's a possibility that that baby may not make it.
Mm-hmm. But Athena, who's cute and
so
very
cute.
lively as well.
They all look cute.
They're all cute and lively.
And it's fun, once Athena has her second stage, I heard she had a Glenn shunt. There is a third. Because of the complexity of her heart disease, the surgeries are in stages. Her last surgery hopefully will happen when she's about 4 to 6 years of age, called Fontan procedure. And when that is completed, you will see now a different look. Her lips now will be redder.
It's nice.
Jonas, you're talking about detecting when the baby is still in the womb.
That's right.
Are there any identifiable, adults have risk factors.
That's right.
How about congenital heart disease? Are there identifiable risk factors
Yes.
for the pregnant women?
In fact, as most of the time, the OBs do not actually see them. They don't get ultrasound. But there are risk factors, primarily what the mothers are doing or what they're exposed to. For example, you're not pregnant, you didn't know that you're pregnant and you suddenly started like drinking. So alcohol, exposure to alcohol, smoking, exposure to radiation, taking some illicit drugs, trying to take in some abortifacients, drugs that can cause abortion, and it was not completed. That can physically harm the organs, including the heart. One important thing that is that can cause significant heart disease is if a mother develops German measles.
Yes.
And that's why for women who would like to eventually bear a child, before getting married, you have to probably just get another booster of that measles, German
Just
measles.
to make sure.
Just to make sure, because
just to be
it's just
sure.
a shot, but the consequences of having a baby with significant heart problems, not only the heart, actually the eyes and the
Overall
ears.
health.
Yeah, so German measles. And then, but just like what was said, most of the time, when you look at the mothers whose kids have congenital heart defects, they don't have risk factors. They were doing good prenatal checkup. So there's still a lot of unknown why some of these babies will have congenital heart defects
On birth, no?
Yeah.
on birth.
So, and then
right.
as soon as they're born, then that's the time you address their congenital heart defect. Doctors, we have another caller on the line, Mrs. Erfe. Good evening.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Loud and clear. Go ahead with your question, please.
Okay, yeah, because in the States, I heard Dr. Oz stressing that you should have the size of the bad cholesterol checked. It's not just your LDL or the HDL. You have to have the size checked and also get a calcium scan of your heart. How do we go about this? Because when you have your heart checked, and normally, like, the doctor will just ask you to get the standard blood test, fasting blood sugar and everything, but the size of the calcium and the bad cholesterol is not really being checked. Sorry, I'm just concerned because my mom died of a heart attack at 42. I'm 38 now. I started getting palpitations at 34. And then after several back and forths with the doctor, it turns out it's just hormonal. But, I'm scared because I have a history of heart disease in my family. So I just want to make sure that I've covered all my bases.
Thank you, Mrs. Erfe. Doctors?
The
Dr.
calcium
Garcia.
scoring that Mrs. Erfe mentioned actually is available also in the Philippines. But studies have shown that early deposition, which actually Jonas mentioned before, are detected by calcium scoring. It's actually a test that will check the calcium content in your vasculature. And there's a certain number that actually they will see whether you're overboard or not. Now, it's an early detection. It can actually tell you whether, despite your LDL cholesterol, despite all your risk factors, how much calcium you have. We normally reserve it for people who are actually at high risk to develop heart disease. So that could be done, and it could give you an idea of your risk of developing a heart attack. But routinely, it's not even being done in the States as part of a routine checkup. Maybe that's why some people don't receive it, because we still bank on the traditional way of checking whether you're going to have a heart attack or not. Mrs. Erfe mentioned that her mom had a heart attack at the age of 42, and she's now 38. I think Mrs. Erfe should go back to her own lifestyle first, find out, am I doing everything? Knowing that I have an early history of family heart disease, maybe I should look into whether I'm watching my diet. Am I doing my exercise well? Am I in the right weight? I'm not smoking. And then probably do an annual checkup. You mentioned who are those who need an annual checkup. I was asked that. Is there a magic number? Again, it rests on your family history and your predisposition to develop that. Now, everything is yes. Everything is yes. The targets are also different. Our patients love to look at the numbers and decide for themselves. They don't like to go to their doctors, not realizing doctors have different targets for different people. Like if your family's history is strong, we'd probably put your target at optimum. For LDL, she mentioned LDL, that's the bad cholesterol. In the Philippines, medyo lechon de leche, LDL. If you want to remember what's the bad cholesterol. So that's the bad cholesterol. So if your LDL, if you look at the numbers, they would say up to 150, you're okay. Not for the cardiologist. We want it below 100. If you have a strong family history, we want it about 70. That's a big difference, 150 and 70.
Yes.
So we'd probably say there are tests to check, but they're not yet for standard routine checking like the calcium scoring. But let's make sure that the traditional ones are met to their optimum. Then probably we can see if we can prevent a heart attack.
Mrs. Airfair is still on the line.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes, would you have any other question for our doctors?
Actually, yeah. Because since I'm so into heart health, I take chia seeds and oatmeal every day, stuff like that, and I try to live a healthy lifestyle. And I also know that heart attack symptoms for men and women are different. Some women, they just get a backache and it turns out to be a heart attack already. So how come, actually I was watching earlier, how come it's not being stressed that it's different for men and women? Because like normally people would think that the standard heart attack symptom would be the dramatic, na you're clutching your chest, it's so painful. But then a lot of doctors say that that rarely happens. Na talagang you're clutching your chest, there's a heavy weight, something like that. So I just want to know for sure what are the symptoms for men and women so that everyone's more aware that, you know, sometimes like a simple backache can already send you to the hospital.
Thank you, Mrs.
Yeah,
Airfair.
that's a very good point.
That's valid. Well, I'd like to disclaim that. The fact that
We talked
The
about
back
that
pain.
we talked
earlier.
about
back pain.
that. Is there gender preference or gender difference between men and women? I probably say symptom-wise, no. It's the matter of how you treat the symptoms that come to your life. Women, actually, they would say that you have a protective mechanism, which is true. If you're gonna look at the statistics, more men, 4 men compared to 1 woman actually will suffer a heart attack. That's statistics. But that is fast changing with the corporate world. I think that those statistics stand when we women actually are pampered by our men. When we don't have to work, we don't smoke, we don't have the stress of life, we don't multitask, and that's against our will, then maybe, yeah, women would not have a lot of heart attacks. But then we do all of those things. The protective mechanism which our female hormones, estrogen, afford is negated by smoking. Statistics show that more women smoke now compared to men. Used to be that we're very, very small, 10%. I think we're fast reaching 40% of women do smoke. Number 2, we also work hard. And number 3, I think we seek help late. Symptom-wise, it's the same. Now, what you say, Mrs. Erfe, is also true. Doctors treat women differently. That's one of the advocacies of the Philippine Heart Association to ensure that women's health is actually treated equally. I'm a woman. I would like to be treated equally just like Dr. Jonas here.
Yes.
I may be prettier, but I'm still a person.
Yes.
So which means when a woman goes to a doctor, regardless whether in the Philippines or in the States, they will tell you it's probably heartburn, you're probably tired. And at the back of our mind, probably some of the doctors think that women does not suffer heart disease that easily. But those symptoms could actually relate to a heart disease already. So they should be treated equally. There's no difference for me.
Okay, no difference in treating a woman or a man. She mentioned the backache
Yeah,
that could lead to a heart attack.
The backache is a little bit, if you're thinking of an aortic aneurysm,
I was about
that could actually relate to the backache. Some chest pain do go back to the, chest pain radiate to the back, but normally back aches do not really pertain to heart disease per se, coronaries.
Okay, they don't really trigger a heart attack or maybe even a stroke.
Aortic aneurysm, that could be a sign of an aortic aneurysm.
Helen, is there anything else, I guess, any other chest pain or any other equivalent of chest pain causing heart
The
attack?
classic chest pain is actually chest heaviness or discomfort with numbness radiating to the left arm.
Which is felt by both the man and the woman.
Yes.
Okay, doctors, we will talk more about this very interesting topic, taking good care of your heart, when MedTalk returns.
know that most heart attacks occur between the hours of 8 and 9 in the morning? According to creativerules.com, you're more likely to have a heart attack on Monday morning than any other time of the week.
We're on our last leg of the show talking about taking good care of your heart. Since it's Heart Month, what will it take in order to avoid seeing your cardiologist or a heart surgeon? We'd like to see you guys because we want to get a checkup, not because we're feeling bad. So what will it take?
I think the word is prevention. Okay, you don't want to see a cardiologist when you're having a heart attack or you're in the emergency room in a life-threatening condition. So it's really prevention. And we would like to stress in the Philippine Heart Association that prevention should start in the young, because heart disease really has its roots during childhood. So we have this slogan now we call 50 to 100, or Go 50 to 100, which is a daily healthy lifestyle. And if you will allow me, 50 to 100 stands for 5 is 5 servings of fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
2 is less than 2 hours of screen time. Screen time meaning like TV or iPad, anything that will make you sedentary. 1 is at least an hour of moderate physical activity. And then the double zero, the first zero is for no to sugar or sweetened beverages,
So
including
hard to
soda.
do. Ooh, okay.
And 0, the other 0 is smoking. So the 50 to 100. So we coined it that way so it's easier to remember. It's hard to follow,
Yes.
and it applies to all ages, kids until adults. Okay? And we feel that if you have that kind of thinking and you start it when you're young, then maybe you don't have to see a heart surgeon or a cardiologist for a bypass or an angioplasty.
So 50 to 100. Thank you for reminding us about that. Thank you for educating us about that, Dr. Del Rosario. We'll keep it in mind. I will try to erase LDL, lechon de leche, from my consciousness. Maybe once in a while it's okay. No?
Once in a while, it's okay.
Okay,
That's
Dr.
right.
Garcia, a final message.
I'll say go 50 to 100. There's no problem about 50 to 100 because it's natural. It doesn't entail any chemicals. And though it's hard to do it, let us do it both. I mean, we doctors also have to walk the talk. So we're going 50 to 100. Let's jumpstart our heart with 50 to 100.
I'm starting my heart with 50 to 100, and I hope everyone here in the studio and everyone watching, 50 to 100 are the numbers to remember,
That's
to take
right.
good care of your heart. Again, we'd like to thank Dr. Jonas Del Rosario and Dr. Helen Ong-Garcia for enlightening us about 50 to 100 and how to take good care of our heart. Remember, prevention is key. See you again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. here on MedTalk, your scheduled on-air consultation on the Solar News Channel. This is Angel Jacob. Good night.